Hey guys, welcome back to another Freaky Fast Friday episode where we give you the scoop on a case in 30 minutes or less. So sit back, make yourself a drink or a cup of tea, and join us for this week's episode. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we're going to talk about a pretty sensationalized case. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it was really popular in the media when it first happened, and then it actually gained a lot of social media attention this last summer in 2020 when the murder of George Floyd happened, because that kind of ignited a lot of people started bringing up other really unjust cases of deaths of Black people. When I was doing the research for this episode, I was even more shocked when I actually found out a lot of the backing to really how horribly this case was handled. So let's jump into it. So Tamla Horsford was a 40-year-old mother of 5. So already props to her because she had 5 children. And she was found dead in the backyard of a Cumming, Georgia home where she had been attending a adult sleepover with other football moms. Initially, her death was ruled an accident. So basically, kind of as just a short synopsis of what happened is the police department believed that she had fallen from the balcony of the house, and this was all kind of brought on by acute ethanol intoxication. So basically, they thought that she was so drunk that she was like sloppy drunk and falling over, and she fell off a balcony. And that, just as a side note, there was nearly a 4-foot railing. So Tamla's husband, which, sorry, I might have said her name wrong before, I wasn't sure how to pronounce it, has maintained the fact that he does not think that the truth about her case has been told yet. Of course, he wasn't there, so he doesn't know exactly what the truth is, but I mean, you guys can probably understand that there's a little bit of weird feelings about this case because of kind of how racially charged it is, I guess. And then also just we'll get to it in just a second here, but just the unknowns and kind of the really quickly drawn conclusions that honestly there isn't enough evidence to say that's the case, which of course is why it has been reopened. It is still like open and like they are still investigating it. And I do want to mention, because I think it's important to say, that she was the only Black woman at this sleepover. So Tamla and her family lived in Forsyth County, which is about 40 miles northeast of Atlanta. This county has a really bad history of racism, and there is a lot of it's a predominantly white suburb of Atlanta, basically. Tamla was set to attend an overnight birthday party. So like we mentioned, it was kind of this adult sleepover themed birthday party. They were all going to watch a football game together and like play Cards Against Humanity and drink and have fun. It was just for a celebration. And the way that she knew all these women was that they all of their kids played in the same youth football league. It was Jeanne Meyer's birthday, and that's the house that they were at for this party. Before Tamla left for the party that night, she cooked her husband dinner. So she didn't even really and her children, obviously. She didn't get to the party until later. She, took care of her kids and made sure they were fed and everything first. And she, being the great mother that she was even later to the party than she was supposed to be, because she was making a breakfast casserole for her boys to eat in the morning. Again, all of her sons were all of them played sports. So there was probably maybe like a sports event, and she wanted to make sure they were fed, even though she was going to be gone the next day. On her way to the party, knowing that people were going to be drinking and it was supposed to be a really good time, and she didn't want to come empty-handed. So not is she a great mom, but she's also a great house guest. She went to the store and she picked up a nice bottle of tequila. So she arrived at the slumber party sometime between 8:30 and 10 p.m. Basically, they all started hanging out and drinking, and they watched a LSU versus Alabama game. and then they played Cards Against Humanity. So overall, nothing seems super weird here. It doesn't seem like anyone was treating her in a hostile way, or
Well,
at
and
least that no one said. So,
there's this picture that, sorry to interrupt you, but there was this picture that I remember seeing back when this murder first happened, like in the couple months following, like, and it's this picture. I'm sure everybody has seen it if you're familiar with this case, but it's all of them sitting on a couch,
mhm.
and she is the only black woman, obviously, but it's such an eerie picture to look at with what we know now, and now that
Mhm.
we know that, like, I mean, obviously no wrongdoing has been proven, but I am not buying that there was no wrongdoing.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it
it's an eerie picture to look
I'll
at now that we
post
know
that
that.
photo on the Instagram when we upload this
Oh, I
podcast
just
episode as well. But yeah, so though I'm saying that it doesn't seem like anything weird has happened, you guys have to keep in mind, who, like the listeners of this podcast and you, Caitlin and Abigail, that um, the only witnesses were all of these white people at this party, right? So if they're all friends, you would probably want to back up your friend, protect your friend, even if you know that something went wrong. So it's possible that
Well,
everyone's saying, oh, yeah, it was fine. It was just a fun girls' night. We were all having a great time.
and
And that might not have been the case.
not
So,
to mention, it's my understanding that Tamla, like, wasn't really good friends with Jean. She just, like, she knew a couple other people that were going to the party, and so she knew them, but
mhm.
she didn't really necessarily know
Well,
Jean
and
that well.
they, probably
They were like
all hung
acquaintances.
they were all acquaintances and they all wanted to hang out and be social with each other because their children played sports together. That's kind of my understanding of probably what their relationship is like. Like they're not the best of friends, but you want to be social and civil with the people that your kids play sports with just because then
Hmm.
that's easier for them. Um so anyway, that's kind of a side note there. So Tamla had packed an overnight bag, as Jean Meyer had expressed her worry that no one should drive home drunk, which, fair point, Jean, that's okay with me. And Tamla had changed into a white paw print decorated onesie shortly after arriving. So she changed into her PJs. And she had good fashion sense, apparently, too. Um, Originally, the party was supposed to be a girls' night only, but Meyer's boyfriend, Jose Barrera, who ends up being a pretty big part of the story or the case, ended up sticking around instead of going out with a fellow friend of theirs, like fellow husband, which was Tom Smith. So at that point, there were a total of 12 people in the house, and 8 of them were planning on staying the night. And Tamla was one of those people. The house was a big multi-level, like very suburban style, like something you would see in like the movies of what you think a white woman in Georgia like house would look like basically. Um the back door led out onto an upper level deck, and then all you had to go to the front door to be at street level. So kind of like a split level, I guess you would say that would be. Um
Yeah, and like the backyard kind of like slanted down as
like
far as I
sloped,
understand.
yeah. So
Yeah.
essentially you would enter on like the main level, and then by the time you got to the back of the house and went out the back door, you would be kind of
You
above
were like on
ground.
top. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. So like this bottom floor was like, it was underground if you were looking at it from the front of the house, but it was
so
like even
like
with the backyard.
so like it was on a hill, essentially.
Kind of.
sort
Yeah,
of,
more or
yeah.
less.
Tamla was the only habitual smoker in the house, and she would regularly step outside to smoke cigarettes, and she also smoked marijuana multiple times throughout the night. This is illegal in Georgia, just as a side note. I know they're behind the times, but whatever, that's besides the point. Myers had said to her, or like kind of teased her about it a few times, and said she shouldn't do it in front of her boyfriend because he was, I can't remember exactly what his
He's like
title
a,
was,
I'm pretty sure he's some kind of
like
what's it
corrections
called?
officer. So yeah, he was a former probation officer, and he was um no stranger to like law enforcement, I guess. And that comes into play in a little bit more, like a little bit later too. Let me look and see if I can figure it out. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah, he
I
was like
called him. I saw him called like two different things, but yeah, he
he
worked with the justice system, I
essentially, I'll
guess.
say this kind of as some foreshadowing. He had access to court documents, I
He
guess
also
I'll say.
he basically he worked for the government in some way.
Yeah, and yeah. So again, I'll say this lightly. Myers had teased Tamla about it, but who knows exactly like if it really was teasing, if it was coming off at teasing, or if she was sort of serious in a way to not be doing that in front of Jose. Barrera is his last name. I might refer to him as Barrera later on. So around 2 a.m. was when Horsford got up to smoke a cigarette on the back porch. The last person to see her was Bridget Fuller, who was another person at the house party. And she was the last person awake other than Tamla. Her husband, Bridget Fuller's husband, came to pick her up around 1:47 a.m., which was well after everyone else in the house had gone to bed. Tamla was seen by Bridget eating a bowl of gumbo. Love that. And she had said, "Oh, I'm planning on going to bed soon. I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette and then go to bed." Fuller later said in an interview that Horsford was a seasoned drinker and it would have taken a lot to knock her on her ass. So, and a lot of people said this, like a lot of family members of Tamla said this too. They basically said, okay, you're telling us that you think she got sloppy drunk. That's not like her. I've never seen her so drunk. She can't
Because
walk
that's
straight.
so
So,
I think like the sensationalized headline was like, she had 3 times the legal limit in her blood system. And yes, that's a freaking lot, but like, honestly, somebody who drinks a lot of alcohol regularly, like, I don't know. It seems like it wasn't like her to be like falling off the balcony. Like,
yeah.
No, and also I want to mention that, and I mean, who knows? Maybe she was comfortable with these people, but I just feel like if you were in a new situation where you might be a little bit like nervous, you probably wouldn't drink as much.
so it's not like a question if she drank a lot. She drank a lot.
She definitely did.
Well,
She had a
yes,
lot of
but
Yeah.
alcohol in her
I mean,
system.
did
She
she
was,
drink more than what she knew she could handle?
See, and that
Because
that
if
is that
she's a
is the
regular
question.
drinker,
And it seems like a few people are saying basically no. She drank a lot, but she could handle her alcohol well. She would never get so drunk to the point where she would possibly fall off a balcony. Like that was just not
well,
possible,
and
basically,
it's
for her.
it's so late in the night and like she hasn't passed out yet. She's the last person awake. Like,
She's just chilling, eating gumbo, about to smoke a
yeah,
cigarette. I
she's
don't
just
know.
living her life, you know?
I don't know. Yeah. And again, I'll bring up the 4 foot tall barrier, like railing. I mean, to fall off of that, you would have to be like kind of rocking over it or like push
Well,
yourself off, right? You
well, and
wouldn't be
that's
able
like
to
that's
do
like
it
the
on your
theory though,
own.
is that she was like throwing up over the balcony and she just went too
oh,
far.
so
Well, but there was no
here's
throw up found.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Myers' home security system registered when doors were opening and closing, like I mentioned earlier. And the timing of when they showed the doors opening and closing confirmed Fuller's statement about her husband picking her up. So, not to say that Fuller couldn't have done something malicious before her husband picked her up, but that's kind of unlikely. Um, Tamla must have went out onto the back porch around this time because by 1:57 a.m. the door had registered as being opened, closed, and then opened again, but it never closed again. So basically, what it seemed like happened is Tamla and possibly Bridget had gone outside, closed the door, and like standing out there talking or whatever.
Well, no, Bridget was gone by then. She went out the front door.
I guess
Go
the
ahead.
the problem I have with this part of the evidence is that the door opened, closed, and then opened again. So why
it
did she
didn't
go?
close.
But well, I mean, it's not that weird. She didn't close it behind her, but I guess why did she go out, then back in, then back out, and then never went? I mean, obviously she never went back in because that's when she died. But it's
Huh?
just weird that she went back inside the house.
No, you would have opened it,
Yeah, so
closed
she
it behind you.
opened the door, went outside, closed the door. Then she went back inside
Yeah.
because the door was opened again.
Right. So why
Like,
is
if
it
she
weird that she went back inside?
Or somebody
because she
came
that's what
out
I
behind
think.
her.
That's what
Yeah.
I think it must have been, is someone came out behind her. That's
And
because
went back in a different door?
Hmm.
there's too many.
Or just went in the door and didn't close it.
It should have just been that when she walked out onto the balcony, she opened the door and closed it behind her. That's it. That should have been all it was.
And then
Well, and
opened
then it should
closed
have
when she
opened
went
again,
back
closed
in.
again.
But she's dead, so obviously she didn't open and close it.
So that's why.
Oh, you're saying it would have been weird to open the door, close the door, open the door, but not go back in. So
Exactly.
somebody followed her,
That's
pretty
what I
much.
think. I think that it's highly likely that someone
That's pretty
followed her out there,
obvious.
and then because
Well,
they
and
possibly knew the home security system, they didn't mess with the door anymore.
so she also wasn't wearing a coat, which for whatever reason, that's like such a weird tidbit to me because it was cold, like it was November. November?
Yeah,
Am I
but
making that up?
November in Georgia.
Yeah, so I was there in early October and it was chilly. It was like 60 degrees.
Well, and if you're used to
And
warm weather, that's
she's
cold.
from the Caribbean.
Yeah, so
Like
I'll get to that. I haven't gotten to
she's
that yet.
she's from the Caribbean, like she grew up in the Caribbean, so like I don't know, it's just weird that she didn't grab a coat before she went out.
Yeah, I mean, but like when you're that intoxicated and possibly high on a, like, maybe she just
Wasn't cold.
wasn't
Yeah.
cold, wasn't
I
thinking
mean,
about it, just wanted to smoke her cig and go to bed. I don't know.
also alcohol makes you feel like you're warm.
That's true.
Yeah.
It does raise
So
your body
I'm
temperature
just
because
saying that's the least suspicious thing to me.
it increases blood
yeah,
flow,
I
so
agree. Well, and also I don't know. I don't know if I would buy the fact that she was like forced outside to then be
Mhm.
pushed off. It To me it's more like maybe she was already standing out there and then someone saw her and
And
then
was
they
like, eh.
pushed her. That's
Yeah,
what I would
maybe.
think. Anyway, so the next morning at around 7:30 a.m., the homeowner's aunt, so her name was Madeline Lombardi. She lived at the home, by the way. Um,
She like lived in
found
the basement.
found
Yeah.
Horsford face down, motionless under the porch. So again, so she fell off of the balcony and landed face down. Lombardi at the time said a prayer, and she didn't check the body at all. She just said a prayer. Then she went to find Myers and say that something had happened to her friend from the islands, was in quotes in the interview. So Horsford had moved from the Caribbean at age 11. At 8:59, the homeowner's boyfriend, which was Jose Barrera, called 911. So this is a long time. Okay, like 7:30 to 8:59. That's like an hour and a
Yeah.
half before he called 911. I think that's odd, super weird.
And not to mention that he admitted to like moving her leg, but
Yeah.
he didn't roll her over, he didn't attempt CPR, he didn't like check her pulse, he didn't do any of that, which in my mind, somebody who finds somebody that they think is deceased, most people would like flip them over and start trying to revive them. Like unless you knew they were already dead, I can't imagine just letting them lay there face down. She
Well,
was face
so
down, not like with her head to one side, like her nose was on the ground.
yeah.
Like, you know what I
Well,
mean?
so
So
the
I
problem
I can't imagine that somebody would have just
I
like let her lay there.
first of all, I don't think I would touch a dead body, period. So I kind of
But they
understand.
don't know she's dead. This I'm like thinking
Um,
they know
I
she's
mean,
dead.
they know she's dead. I would know if you saw a body laying face down, motionless, you would assume they
you
were
would
dead,
assume they were dead.
right?
Yeah,
I
that's what I
And I
guess.
think.
and I wouldn't want to touch a dead body. And if this guy is in like crime, fucking whatever the word, crime
Well, the
enforcement,
thing is people are
law
like
enforcement. I'm an idiot.
people think that he touched her in certain spots to like have an excuse for him having touched her before. Like he's trying to cover up any evidence of his DNA that would have been on her, you know?
Yeah. Um. Anyway, but I'm saying if he was in the law enforcement industry, I could see why he would be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna touch a dead body. I don't want anything to look weird or to, like, disrupt evidence or anything." But I understand that there's also the other side of it that maybe because he was in law enforcement, he was like, "Oh, if I touch her, then it'll make it look like, oh, the reason why my DNA is on her is because I was making sure she was, was alive or wasn't
Exactly.
alive or whatever." So, kind of both sides of the story there. So he called 911, and in the call, more or less, he said that she was face down, not breathing, and he said there was a small cut on her wrist, and that's when he suggested that it could possibly be a self-inflicted cut. Interesting, kind of.
So, like, what a bizarre thing to, like, include in a 911 call. Like,
Who cuts
she didn't
It
die from
seemed
that.
it
who
seems
cuts themselves and then
weirdly.
jumps off of a
So the thing is,
balcony?
Exactly.
it wasn't like it was a big enough cut that she would have been doing it to try to kill herself. Okay.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
number two, I think you're right. I think it's a really specific note to say, as if you wanted to make them think that you don't know what happened. Like you're just kind of like, oh, maybe she was killing herself. I don't know. And then
Yeah,
Yeah.
also
in the background of the 911 call, you can hear a woman's voice who's kind of farther away saying, "Oh, maybe she fell off the balcony," something along those lines. That's not word for word. So again, kind of like they're trying to make it like it gives me weird vibes, kind of like Jean Benet Ramsey, the
Yeah.
call to the police where they're like giving her weird specific, like just seems like overacted, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, they're trying to be really
Like cover
not.
their tracks, I guess.
Yeah, well, and they're trying to be, like, non-suspicious, but they're coming
right.
off more suspicious in
Exactly.
hindsight.
Exactly.
Like,
Which that happens all the time in
oh, totally.
cases like this. Like even that case about Chris Watts where he was like he was super willing to talk to the police at first, and he was just chatting with
Yeah.
them, and then the neighbor was like, that guy does not talk that much, that is super weird that he's acting like that. So
Yeah.
it's just always interesting how it'll come back to bite you. Like we mentioned before, it's pretty clear that she had multiple blunt force injuries to her body and a really high blood alcohol level, and it is kind of totally possible that she would have had a lot of blunt force injuries from a 14-foot fall. That's how tall it would have been if she fell from the top of the balcony. But the first autopsy that was done did not satisfy Horsford's family. They were kind of like, yeah, that seems a little bit weird that there was no foul play kind of insinuated from the autopsy. And the second autopsy that the GBI did was where they actually found all these, in my opinion, weird injuries that would make it seem more like there was some foul play going on. So she had multiple injuries to her head, neck, and torso. That's not super weird. That could be possible from falling off a balcony. But she had blunt force trauma to her extremities as well as her head, neck, and torso, which is a little bit weird because why would your extremities have blunt force trauma? Basically overall, all of these things kind of made investigators believe that she had been fighting back against somebody.
Also, I'm thinking like for all of the spots that she had blunt force trauma in, it would have to be like a very, very she would have had to fall in a specific way to
Yes,
get
or
all of
fallen
those
on
injuries.
all of these places at the same time, which
Well,
would
and the
probably
thing
not have been the
is
case. If you would have accidentally fallen over something, you'd been like trying to like catch yourself. You wouldn't just be like psh, fall flat, you
well, and
know?
her arms were like not under her body, they were out to the sides.
She also had four types of hemorrhages in her skull and brain area. She had a dislocation of the right wrist. Again, kind of like, girl, were you fighting against somebody? She had cuts on her arms and legs. The whole cuts situation, how do you get cuts from falling like that? Like when you're a kid and you like run and fall and cut your leg, like that's completely different than falling off a balcony. I don't know how you would get cuts from that. I don't know. Seems weird. Anyway, there were cuts on her face, wrist, hand, and her lower legs. So basically, her whole body showed signs of something other than falling off a balcony. She also had a laceration to the right ventricle of her heart. This, it, it sounds really scary and bad, which it is, obviously. It could kill you, or it did kill her, but it can happen from blunt force trauma. So, like, if she was hit somewhere near her heart, like if you get like in a really bad car accident and the airbag hits you like that, it's possible that you could get a tear in your heart. So, just as a side note. And then also in this autopsy, in addition to the blood alcohol level of 0.238, she also had traces of THC and an anxiety drug that I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of, at
Alprazolam?
alprazolam,
Alprazolam?
a lamb, and at the time that those were all present in her blood at the time of her death. So it wasn't that she was just drunk; she also had a few other drugs in her system.
It seems like the people that knew Tamla pretty well, like, they didn't think, pretty much as a consensus, didn't think that she could have possibly been so drunk that she would have felt like that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. When she was found, her head was face down. So, like Caitlin mentioned, it wasn't turned to one way or the other. It was face down, like nose against the ground, and
which
both
I
of
feel
her
like
feet.
with the force of her hitting the ground, like, and her neck breaking, I feel like her face would have gone one way or another,
Yeah,
honestly.
both of her feet were pointing to the right, which is weird. Her right arm was close to her body, and then her left arm was extended and bent at the elbow. So, just a weird way to it. I mean, if you're among the same beliefs that we kind of are, that there's a little bit of foul play going on here, um, it would be like how you would place a body hoping that people would think that she had fallen, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of the assumption here.
No, I totally see it that way, honestly.
Yeah, so Barrera was a court officer at the time, and he had accessed the incident reports internally on multiple occasions. So he kind of kept going back and seeing if there had been any other, like, what did they know? Like, is there something they know that he doesn't know, so he can kind of get ahead of it? That's kind of the way I interpret that. He was eventually fired from illegally accessing these documents, of
But they
course.
didn't. How did this not become like an issue with the case if they obviously were like he was checking in on it, which makes me think he knew that something bad happened.
Well, and
Exactly.
so there are a lot of people that are dead set on Tamla Horsford did not die in an accidental death.
Yeah.
I just don't see a reason that he would have looked at these documents in like the internal like computer system. I just don't see a reason for him to look at them so many times. Like, I can't think of a not suspicious reason for him to be looking at them, you know?
Barrera eventually told the officers that he had moved her leg to see if she was still alive. He also said that he had found and moved the unlit cigarette and lighter on the deck before he saw the body, which is also weird because Tamla was going outside to smoke a cigarette. So, I mean, how, I don't know. The cigarette was unlit. Anyway, in the original 911 call, he also said that there were security cameras and they were installed and pointed at the backyard. However, they were found to have no batteries and they were dead and they were not recording. So another suspicious kind of thing. Um, so as of right now, the Forsyth County Sheriff's, well, as of February 20th, 2019, the Forsyth County Sheriff's closed the case and it was ruled an accidental death. Um, as we know, especially in the last year in 2020, there have been a lot of people that have basically said we need more independent investigations of this because there is a lot of messed up details to the case and things that just don't make sense. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, conclusions that were drawn that to me, I mean, just as like a random Joe Schmo, don't seem conclusive, right? A lot of this evidence doesn't seem conclusive enough to make.
To stop investigating.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I just want to know what would have happened if she wasn't severely intoxicated. Like, what if she had just like a normal amount of alcohol in her system? Like, what, I still think they would have found something to like explain it away.
Yeah.
Oh, probably.
Just as a side note too, the GBI, so the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, is currently reinvestigating the case, so it is technically open again.
Oh, that's good.
With the GBI, not with the Forsyth County, so it's a little different.
Maybe someday we'll have an update for you guys.
Yeah, hopefully. So that's it for this week's Freaky Fast Friday episode. Let us know what your guys' thoughts are in the YouTube comments. I know this is kind of, like I said, a pretty, I don't want to say popular, that's kind of the wrong word, but
Well known.
well-known case, and it gained a lot of social media attention in the past couple years and even months specifically. So you guys can find us on YouTube and leave those comments at Who What Where Podcast. We're also the same username on Instagram, which is where I usually post the pictures, like relevant pictures for the case. So you can find us there. You can also tell us your thoughts there. And thanks everybody so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.